Another book, this one does come out after the year after the papyri fragments were recovered from the dust of decades. Frankly, this is not that important a volume. Just to be blunt about it. The third volume I want to mention is J. Todd, a longtime managing editor of the Ensign, had a fascination with this topic, and he wrote a book called The Saga of the Book of Abraham, published by Deseret Book in 1969. And out of all these, this is probably my favorite. And so I recommend it. However, you should be aware of two problems. Number one, it's long out of print. So if you want to get a copy, you've got to go into the Mormon, secondary book market. And as always in that market, you have to pay a premium. I bought my copy a few years ago for like $45. And over time, that price is going to inch up. The second problem is it is dated. There have been significant developments since this book came out. And so you must update Todd with Donald Peterson. This book was published posthumously shortly after his death, but Peterson really advanced the ball in terms of our understanding of Levelo and how the papyri came into Joseph's hands. So you simply must read Peterson. And so you can update Todd with the book. There are also a couple of articles. Most of the guts of what Peterson came up with is in this article from BYU Studies.
Go back one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The only book you want us to read, you flash it on the screen and say, ignore the ones that are up there all that time.
Well,
No, the next.
Oh, this one.
Yeah, that one.
When the conference is over, we plan on putting this PowerPoint up on the website. So don't feel like you have to. There's going to be a lot of bibliography. Don't feel like you have to jot it all down now. You'll be able to get it at your leisure off the website. So this is the story of the Book of Abraham: mummies, manuscripts, and Mormonism. Little M alliteration there. And then we have Peterson's BYU Studies article. And then there's also a paper by John Gee at Farms. And Gee eventually will write a full-length history that will supersede a lot of this material. But in the meantime, you have to kind of get it in bits and pieces. Okay.
Joseph recognized that there was some important things connected with these documents. Obviously, he was ready to start translating. And we find that in July 1835, he already began translating these documents. And a month later, took a break from translating to visit the saints in Michigan. And in October of 1835, he resumed the study of the papyri. And we get this from his accounts and journals in History of the Church, other fragments history that we have. And it's at this point that he received revelation concerning facsimile 2. And then in November, study of the papyri continued. And it was in the Kirtland period that also he created the Kirtland Egyptian papers, which were Kevin mentioned earlier and we brought up again, was done. And let's see here. There we go. The current text was finished that we have now by the end of July. Now, what we have for the Book of Abraham is probably only about 1/4 of what was produced. We know that it took a lot longer, according to journalists, to read through the Book of Abraham that they had than what we have today. So we know that they had much more that was translated than what we have. And beyond that, the stuff that we don't have in the Book of Abraham is lost. We don't know what happened to the rest of the translations that they had. It just doesn't exist anymore. Or we don't have it anyhow. A history of the publication. It was first published in 3 issues in the Times and Seasons in Nauvoo, beginning in March 1842. And then it was reprinted in the Millennium Star in England in 1842. And then in 1851 it was republished by Franklin Richards in his British tract, The Pearl of Great Price, which is where we get the title, of course, for our portion that we have in the scriptures now. And then Orson Pratt edited an American edition in 1878, and it was canonized in 1880. So it took a number of years to go from the translation to canonization.
Now, we've mentioned the Kirtland Egyptian papers. I'm going to give you a little bibliography on that. You should understand the Kirtland Egyptian papers have been understudied so far, and this is probably the area where there's going to have to be a lot more study in the future. So if you want to get involved in Book of Abraham studies, this is an area that needs work. The kind of classic article on this subject is by Hugh Nibley. Long article, it's like 50 pages long in BYU Studies. It's called The Meaning of the Kirtland Egyptian Papers. And so if you're interested in this topic, I think you've got to start there. So I'll leave that up for a second so that people can jot that one down. Now, this article by John Gee is not focused on the Kirtland Egyptian papers, but it has a significant section devoted to it. And there's some updating of Nibley that I think is important. So I do think you need this chapter in one of the two volumes of the Richard L. Anderson Festschrift, Brother Anderson being one of our speakers at this conference. Now, those are articles about the Kirtland Egyptian papers. What if you want to actually look at the things? Well, that's kind of a problem. There really isn't a good edition of them available. One way you can look at them is to get a set from the Tanners, from their bookstore. A somewhat better way is you can order a set from Michael Marquardt, who has the same microfilm edition as the Tanners, but on facing pages he has transcriptions, and it makes it a little bit easier to follow. This, however, is not a good edition. The pictures come from microfilm, and so they're black and white, they're scratchy, they're hard to see. And so this, if you want to look at them and get a sense for them, go ahead and buy this. But it's not something that a scholar can really use very well. Scholars, of course, want to have access to the originals, or failing that, decent color photographs. And there are color photographs that scholars at farms have and other people have. Brent Metcalf, who was unable to be here today, he usually attends our conferences, he's preparing a critical edition of the Kirtland Egyptian, the Kirtland Egyptian papers that will have a color plate on the left-hand side and a greatly improved transcription on the right-hand side with textual notes. I'm hoping he will do this as a neutral tool that anyone can use, and that should be out in a year or two. So, if you want to wait for that, that'll probably be a better edition than what we have now.